We continue now at the top of Daf Kufyud Beis Amud Beis in Mesechet Yevamos. This is Yevamos Daf 112b. On the previous Amud, there was a machlokas amoraim. Let's say you have a situation where a woman takes an oath to prohibit herself to all Jewish men. So the question is she anticipating a possibility of Yibum as well? And does that include a prohibition of her to the Yavam, to the brother-in-law? And Rav is Mekel, and Rav says that she's not anticipating Yibum, and therefore she's not prohibited to the brother-in-law. And so the Gemara brings a proof from our Mishnah. Our Mishnah is discussing a case where a woman makes an oath not to be with the brother-in-law, and so it says if she does this while her husband is alive, so in such a situation we assume that she wasn't really having in mind to try to avoid Yibum, and so therefore in such a situation we do force that Yavam to do Chalitza. And so the Gemara says, now if you're going to say that the woman actually is anticipating that Yibum might happen, meaning to say, if you're going to say not like Rav, so in that case, mevakshin mi boile, so then we should just merely request that the Yavam do Chalitza. We shouldn't actually force him to do Chalitza. As Rashi over here says, mevakshin mi boile, because then you would say that she had intention, she is anticipating Yibum, and so therefore again it seems to be a proof to Rav that she is not anticipating Yibum, and that's why in Rav's case, she's not going to be prohibited to the Yavam. And so the Gemara answers, no, you can't bring a proof from our Mishnah, because here in our Mishnah, what's the case? Maybe we're talking about a situation where the woman has children, so really there's no reason to anticipate Yibum. So that's why we say in the Mishnah, she's not doing it to get out of Yibum, and therefore we force the Yavam to do Chalitza, to Kuli Haylo Maska Daita, because she's not already thinking that not only is her husband going to die, she's not thinking that also her children are going to die. She's not anticipating Yibum when she has children. But the Gemara says, 1 second, Aval Ein Labanim, but if that's the case, what about in a situation where she would not have children? So what would the halacha be? Apparently you're saying that the halacha would be mevakshin. Apparently the halacha would be that in such a situation, we would just request him to do chalitza, because there we would say that she's intending and she has in mind for the possibility of avoiding Yibum. But if that's the case, so why does it say in the Mishnah, it says, if she had kavana to avoid Yibum, even if it happened while her husband was alive, so then we only request of him to do chalitza, we don't force him to do chalitza, but you don't need to give such a case. Liflog velisni b'dida, we should just make a distinction within the case itself in the Mishnah, and we should say, b'amed devarim amurim, when is all of this true? B'sheyesh labanim, when she has children. Avalein labanim, but if she does not have children, so it's likely that she's trying to avoid Yibum, and she's having an intention with this oath to avoid Yibum. So in such a case, mevakshin, in such a case, we would just request him to do chalitza, and we wouldn't force. Elashma mina, rather, indeed, you do see from the Mishnah, loshna yesh labanim veloshna ein labanim, that it doesn't make a difference if she has children, it doesn't make a difference if she does not have children. Kofano, so we do force him to do chalitza. We do not say that she's anticipating Yibum, and karav, and that is like Rav. So again, she's not anticipating Yibum, and therefore, just like Rav says in Rav's situation over there, when she's prohibiting herself to all Jewish men, again, she's not anticipating Yibum, and she does not include the Yavam in her oath. Shma mina, and indeed, you see from this a proof to Rav. Hadron alach beis Shammai. That is the end of the 13th parak of Mesechet Yevamos. If you're enjoying these videos and this channel, please like, share, and subscribe. And please take a look at the description box below to see how you can support this channel. And we will now begin the 14th parak of Mesechet Yevamos. And the Mishnah says, Cheresh and Nasa Pikachas, let's say you have a situation of a Cheresh, the man is a deaf mute, and he marries a woman who is a healthy woman, Upikeach Shanasa Chereshes, or let's say the other way around, let's say the man is a Pikeach, and he marries a Chereshes, he marries a woman who's a deaf mute. So the halach is, Imratza Lahotzi Yotzi, Imratza Lakayim. If he wants to divorce the woman, he is able to divorce the woman. If he wants to maintain the marriage, he can maintain the marriage. And the reasoning is as follows, Keshem Shu Kones Beremiza, because just like he marries her using hints, in other words, it means to say either him or her are not able to speak, and therefore they use hints in terms of getting into the marriage. Kachu motzi beremiza, so too they're able to divorce using hints. In other words, the same way they entered the marriage, they're able to exit the marriage, and that's why divorce is a possibility in such a situation. Pikeach shanasa pikachas v'nischarsha. Now let's say you have a situation where a pikeach, he marries a pikachas, so again, both the man and the woman are healthy, but then v'nischarsha, then the situation is that she becomes a deaf mute, so the halach is imratza yotz, if he wants he can divorce her, v'imratza yakayim, and if he wants he can maintain the marriage. Now nishtat is now if she becomes in a situation where she's mentally incapacitated, she becomes a shota, she becomes an imbecile, so lo yotzi, so in such a situation, he's not allowed to divorce her. Nischareshu nishtata. Now let's say he's the one that becomes a deaf mute, or he becomes an imbecile. So eino motzia olamis, he's not able to divorce her forever, because when he's in that state, so if it was a situation where the marriage was a regular marriage, they got married as a pikach and a pikachas, so it is a full doraisa marriage. Now really he's not able to divorce her anymore, because again now he would have to divorce her using hints or whatnot, which would not be a full divorce, and therefore divorce is not a possibility. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says, Mibnei ma ha'isha shenischarsha yotza v'ha'isha nischaresh eno motzi. Why do we make a distinction? Why are we saying that when it comes to the situation where the woman becomes a deaf mute, the divorce is possible, but when the man becomes a deaf mute, it's not possible? And so they responded, Amru lo, they said to him, Eino domo ha'isha megaresh li'isha hamiskareshes. You can't compare the man doing the divorce to the woman who's being divorced. Why? Sha'isha yotza l'ritzona v'shalo l'ritzona, because a woman, when she's divorced, it can happen at her will or it could be against her will, and therefore similarly, if she is a deaf mute, that's no different than if it was against her will, and divorce remains a possibility. V'aish eino motzi ela l'ritzona, but the man, he's only able to divorce willingly, and therefore again, if he's in a situation where his nischarsha or something like that, nishtata, so then it may be that he's not able to do the divorce. Hayed Rabbi Yochanan ben Gudgada al hacharesha shehisiyo avia. Now Rabbi Yochanan ben Gudgada, he testified about a situation. Let's say you had a chareshes and she was married off by her father, similar to a situation where a father marries off his daughter who's a minor. So over here we're talking about a chareshes who was married off by her father. Sheyotza beget. So he said even in that situation that's a full marriage, but she is able to be divorced with a get, and the same basic idea, because again a woman can be divorced against her will. And Amrulo, and they said to him, Avzu kayotze ba. Even this is a similar kind of a situation, as Rashi over here says, Avzu pikachas shenischarsha kayotze ba. It's similar to a case where she got married as a pikachas, it was a full marriage, then she became a deaf mute. That's no different than a situation where she was married off by her father as a full marriage, and then you want to divorce her. And we'll take a look at one other Rashi over here. Nishtatis lo yotzi. It says, let's say you have a situation where she becomes an imbecile, so divorce is not possible. Now, why should that be the case? Again, if you can divorce a woman against her will, so what's the difference if she's nishtatis that suddenly he's not able to divorce her? And Rashi says, Begamar mefarish, the Gemara will explain, shelo yinhagu ba minag hefker, v'takanta de Rabbanan. This is really just an institution of the Rabbanan. Really, you should be able to divorce her on a doraisa level, but the Rabbanan said, we don't want people to treat her as hefker, and therefore it's better for her if she's able to stay in the marriage and he's not able to divorce her. And the Mishnah continues, Beizach and Charosh and Nisuin leBeizach Chayes Charoshes. Let's say you have a situation of two brothers who are deaf mutes, and they're married to two sisters who are deaf mutes. Or let's say they're married to two sisters who are pichos, they're not deaf mutes, they're regular healthy women. Or let's say they're married to two sisters, one is a deaf mute and one is not. Or let's say you have a situation of two sisters that are deaf mutes. And they're married to two brothers who are healthy. Or let's say the two deaf mute sisters are married to two brothers who are deaf mutes. Or they're married to two brothers and one is a deaf mute and one is not. In all of these cases, the marriage is not going to be a full doraisa marriage, because you have a situation where at least one of the participants is a deaf mute. So the halacha is, in these cases, hare'elu peturim min hachalitzu min hayibum. They're going to be exempt from chalitza and yibum, because you have a situation over here, let's say one of the husbands dies, so the other one is not able to do yibum or chalitza, because then it's a situation of marrying sisters, and the point is their marriages at the same level, because both marriages are both involving at least one cheresh, and therefore you have a situation of marrying sisters at the same level, which exempts from chalitza and yibum. And then it says in the Mishnah, Vimhayu nachrios. Now let's say these two are not sisters, so then yichnosu, so then they'll be able to marry them. Vimratzu lahotzi yotziu, and if they want to divorce them, they can divorce them as well. No problem divorcing them. Again, you have the same situation where the same way that they are coming into the marriage, they're able to leave the marriage, and that's why divorce is a possibility. And the Mishnah continues, Shnei achin, let's say you have two brothers, echad cheresh ve'echad pikeach. One of them is a deaf mute, and one of them is not. Nisnuin l'shnei achayos pikchos, and they're married to two sisters, and both of the sisters, neither of them is a deaf mute. So here you have a situation where one marriage is a full doraisa marriage, and the other one is a marriage that is deficient. And so the Mishnah says, Meis cheresh bala pikachas. Now let's say you have a situation where the cheresh dies, and he is the husband of the pikachas. He's the husband again of a healthy woman. So ma yasa pikach bala pikachas. So now what should happen in the situation here with the pikach who's married to the pikachas? What's going to happen with this widow of the cheresh? So the halacha is teitze mishum Mishmachos Isha. So the halacha is very simple. She's exempt from Yibam and Chalitza because you have a situation of marrying the sister of, he's going to end up marrying the sister of his wife. In other words, you have a situation over here where the Pikeach is in a full marriage. He's married to a Pikachas, and now comes before him for Yibam another Pikachas, but she was married to his brother that was a Cherish, and now, so she's now the widow, and again, she's the sister of his wife, so there's going to be an exemption. Now, Meis Pikeach Bala Pikachas. Now, let's say the other way around. Let's say the Pikeach is the one who dies, and he was married to the Pikachas. That was a full marriage. So now you have a situation where this widow, this Pikachas, is coming with a full Yibum, and she's supposed to be doing Yibum with an individual who's married to her sister, but it is a deficient marriage. So then what happens? Ma'yasa Cheresh Bal Pikachas. What happens now with the deaf mute who's married to the Pikachas? So in this case, he can't stay married to his wife. Motzi Ishto Beget, he has to divorce his wife with a get, because again, he is awaiting Yibum with somebody that's on a Doraisa level marriage, and he's on a Dorabanan level marriage with his wife, and again, they're sisters, so he has to divorce his wife with a get, but also the wife of his brother, Asura Lolam, that's prohibited to him forever. That's prohibited because he can't do Yibum with her because he was married to her sister on a Dorabanan level. And the Mishnah continues, Shnei Achin Pikchin, let's say you have a case of two brothers who are Pikchin, again, they're not deaf mutes, they're healthy, Nesuin L'Shtei Achayos, and they're married to two sisters, Achas Chereshes, V'Achas Pikachas, one of them is a deaf mute and the other is not. So again, it's a similar situation where one marriage is a Doraisa marriage and the other one is just a Derabanan marriage. So Meis Pikeach Bal Chareshes. So now, if the Pikeach who's married to the Chareshes, again, that is the marriage that is an inferior marriage, if that Pikeach dies and his wife becomes a widow, Mayasa Pikeach Bal Pikachas. So what's going to happen to the Pikeach who's married to the Pikachas? Answer again is simple. Teitzim Mishmachos Isha. She's exempt from Chalitza and Yibam because it's a situation where she is the sister of his wife. Let's say it's the other way around. Meis Pikeach Bal Pikachas. Now, if the Pikeach who's married to the Pikachas, the full marriage, if he dies, so now it's a full Yibam situation. She's going as a Yevamot to the Yavam, presenting a Doraisa marriage situation. Again, in a situation where Mayasa Pikeach Bal Chareshes. So what should the Pikeach who's married to the Chareshes do? Because that is not a full marriage. So again, you have a similar situation. Motzi Ishto Beget, he has to divorce his wife with a get because again, he can't remain married because she's awaiting Yibam. You have a situation where the Yevama is awaiting Yibam with him, and again, they're sisters. Now, in this case, since he's a Pikeach, so Chalitza becomes a possibility. He's able to do Chalitza, so he's able to separate or to avoid the Yibam situation with the wife of his brother with Chalitza. And again, the reason why Chalitza is a possibility over here is because both the Yavam and the Yevama, they're both Pikchim, and so therefore they're able to do Chalitza. And the Mishnah continues, Shnei Achin, let's say you have two brothers, Echad Cheresh ve'Echad Pikeach, one of them is a deaf mute and one of them is not. Nisuin L'Shtei Achayos, and they're married to two sisters, Achas Chareshes v'Achas Pikachas, one of them is a deaf mute and one of them is not. So Meis Cheresh Bal Chareshes. So now, if the Cheresh, who's the husband of the Chareshes, if he dies, again, that's a situation of a deficient marriage. Mayasa Pikeach Bal Pikachas. So what's going to happen with the Pikeach who's married to the Pikachas? Teitze Mishmachos Isha. Again, you're going to have an exemption over here because it's the sister of his wife. But if it's the other way around, Meis Pikeach Bal Pikachas, if the Pikeach who's married to the Pikachas dies, Mayasa Cheresh Bal Chareshes, what's going to be with the Cheresh who's married to the Chareshes? So there again, Motzias Ishto Beget, he has to divorce his wife with a get because you have a situation of a full marriage, a widow from a full marriage awaiting Yibam to him, and he's married to her sister. And again, the wife of his brother is usher to him forever. Again, in this case, you have a situation where Chalitza is not a possibility because he is a Cherish, and of course, again, he can't do the Yibam because he's married to her sister, even though it's a Derabanan marriage, it's still going to be a problem. And the Mishnah continues, Shnei Achin, let's say you have two brothers, Echad Cheresh ve'Echad Pikeach. One of them is a Cheresh, one of them is a Pikeach. Nesuin L'Shtei Nachrios Pikchos. Now, in this case, they're married to two women who are healthy women, but they are not related. They are not sisters to one another. So Meis Cheresh Bal Pikachas. Now, if the deaf mute dies, so Mayasa Pikeach Bal Pikachas. So what should be with the Pikeach who's married to the Pikachas? What does he do with the widow? So Ocholet, so Miyavim, there's no problem over here. He can do Chalitza, he can do Yibam with her, no issue. Meis Pikeach Bal Pikachas. Now, let's say if the Pikeach dies, who's married to the Pikachas, so Mayasa Cheresh Bal Pikachas, what is the Cheresh able to do? Is he able to do Yibam? Yes, Kones, he's able to do Yibam, he can marry this woman, and that is a possibility. However, Ve'eno Motzi Liolam. However, since he's a Cheresh, he's not able to divorce. As we've said, a Cheresh is unable to divorce if the entry into the marriage is from a Deoraisa level entry into the marriage, so divorce becomes an impossibility for the Cheresh. And the Mishnah continues, Shnei Achin Pikchin, let's say you have two brothers who are both Pikchin, Nisuin Lebeis Nachrios, and they're married again to two women that are not related to one another, Achas Pikachas v'Achas Chareshes. One of them is healthy and one of them is a deaf mute. So Meis Pikeach Bal Chareshes. So let's say you have a situation where the Pikeach who's married to the Chareshes, he dies. So Mayasa Pikeach Bal Pikachas. What does the Pikeach who's married to the Pikachas do? So Kone, so number one, he can marry the Chareshes, no problem, he can do Yibum. If he wants to divorce her, he can divorce her, because the man is a pikeach, so he can divorce. The fact that she's a chareshes is irrelevant, because again, a woman can be divorced against her will. Meis pikeach bal pikachas, let's say the other way around. Let's say the one who dies is the pikeach who's married to the pikachas. So mayasa pikeach bal chareshes. So what is the pikeach who's married to the chareshes going to do? So he'll have both possibilities. O cholitz o mayavim. Chalitza becomes a possibility because both the yavam and the yevama, they're both healthy. Or of course, yibam is also a possibility. Shnei achin, let's say you have two brothers, echad cheresh ve'echad pikeach. One of them is a deaf mute and one of them is a pikeach. Nesuim lebeis nachrios, and they're married to two women, and again, the women are not related in this case. Achas chereshes ve'achas pikachas. One of them is a deaf mute, meaning one of the women, and one of the women is not. So meis cheresh bal chereshes. So in this case, let's say the deaf mute dies, who's married to the woman that's a deaf mute. Mayasa pikeach bal pikachas. What can the pikeach do? Kones. He can marry her, obviously, v'im ratzil hotzi yotzi, and then he can divorce her as well, because again, he's a pikeach, he's able to divorce her. Meis pikeach bal pikachas, but if the pikeach who's married to the pikachas dies, so mayasa cheresh bal chareshes, what is the cheresh able to do who's married to the chareshes? Kones, again, he is able to marry her, no problem, the cheresh marrying and doing the yibum, but that is a yibum off of a doraisa marriage, so therefore, ve'eno motzel liolam, since he's a cheresh, he's not able to divorce her forever. And the Gemara says, Amar Rami Bar Chama says, Ma'ishna cheresh v'chareshes, what's the difference in a situation of a deaf mute, let's say he's a deaf mute and she's a deaf mute, the the Rabbanan say they can get married at a Rabbanan level. They allow such a marriage to happen. And what's the difference by imbeciles? That over there, the Rabbanan did not institute a concept of a Rabbanan marriage when you're talking about people who are shota. The Gemara says, the Tanya, as we learned in a Brisa, shota v'katan and shenasu nashim of amesu. Let's say you have a situation of a shota or a katan and they marry women and then they die. Neshosein peturos min hachalitza min hayibam. Their wives are completely patur from chalitza and yibam. In other words, there's no status to that marriage at all. So how come that is the case? Why do we make a distinction and we say by a shota there's no marriage even in a derabbanan level, but a cheresh and a chareshes we allow the marriage? And so the Gemara answers, cheresh v'chareshes the kaima takanta derabbanan takinu l'rabbanan. By a cheresh and a chareshes, they're able to sustain the takana derabbanan. In other words, they're able to live in peace with one another, and they can have regular marriages, and therefore the Rabbanan instituted marriages for them. Takinu lu Rabbanan nisu, and therefore the Rabbanan instituted marriage for them. But shota v'shota, if you have a situation of people who are shotim, the lo kaima takanta derabbanan, where they can't uphold the takana derabbanan, dein adam dorim nachash b'chvifa achas, because it's impossible for a person, this is just an expression, it's impossible for a person to live with a snake in one basket, meaning to say the shotim are not able to get along and stay married. So lo takinu rabbanan nisuin. So therefore the Rabbanan never instituted a concept of nisuin in such a situation. And the Gemara continues, Umaishna katan de lo takinu rabbanan nisuin. Now what's the difference by a katan, by a minor? The Rabbanan did not institute. V'cheresh takinu le rabbanan nisuin, but by a cheresh they did institute marriage. Again, what's the difference there? And to that the Gemara says, cheresh de lo asi lechalal nisuin. When you have a deaf mute, so they're never going to come out of being a deaf mute. They're never going to enter into a situation where they can have marriage on a doraisa level. So takinu rabbanan nisuin, so the Rabbanan instituted nisuin for them. Katan dasi lechalal nisuin, but when it comes to a katan who eventually will become an adult and will be able to get married at a doraisa level, lo takinu rabbanan nisuin. So therefore the Rabbanan did not institute nisuin, did not institute marriage. But the Gemara says, 1 second, vare katana dasi lechalal nisuin. But what about a girl that's a minor? She is going to grow up one day and be able to get married at a doraisa level. V'takinu rabbanan nisuin, and we've seen already previously in the Mesechet that the Rabbanan instituted marriage for a girl that's a minor, even a derabbanan marriage. Let's say she has no father, she's an orphan. So why did they institute marriage for the katana? And the Gemara answers to that, Hasam over there, Shalo Yinagu Ba Minag Hefker. That's only so that people don't treat her like Hefker. It's actually to her benefit to institute marriage in that case. And the Gemara continues, what's the difference that by a girl that's a minor, when she gets married, she has a concept of miyun, there's a concept of refusal, she can refuse the marriage. And what's the difference by a chareshes, where it's a derabbanan marriage, where we don't have the concept of a refusal, that she can refuse the marriage, and she doesn't, again, miyun is to the benefit of the woman, that she's able to get out of the marriage without a divorce, without a get. But the Gemara says, no, they didn't institute it by the chareshes, because if they would, it would create problems problems for her, and we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Kuf Yud Gimel Amud Aleph.